Hey everyone, it's Lisa Danforth, and today I'm here with the amazing Amy Hill. She is the principal and workplace strategist at Workflow Interiors. She's going to be talking today about reimagining the workplace and how the pandemic has pushed the collective reset button, which is just, I think, such a topic these days that we absolutely need to approach. So before I jump in and have Amy sharing her brilliance, I want to share a little bit about Amy so you know where she's coming from. So Amy has always been fascinated by how the built environment impacts the human experience, which is, I loved when I read that. I think it's so, so true. This led her to pursuing a degree in interior design and think about the connection between business, behavior, and space, which ultimately led her to workplace strategy and change engagement. Amy recognized that there are many more elements to contribute to the holistic workplace experience, so that she shifted gears and became a strategist with a passion for helping make the workplace a better place. So Amy, thank you so much for joining in. And I'm going to launch right in, if you're okay with that, and ask you, how has the pandemic been a catalyst for workplace change?
Love that question. Hi, Lisa. Hi, everybody. Welcome. And thank you for having me, Lisa, today. Happy to be here. So I think for starters, it's good to take a step back and look at how pandemics in history have been a catalyst for social change. And they have proven to be that. Historian Patrick Wyman was quoted in an article saying, crises like these reveal what is already broken or in the process of breaking. So just sit with that for a moment. I mean, on a lot of different levels, I think what we're experiencing in this past, what is it, just at this, COVID-versary that we're experiencing, the 1 year COVID-versary that we're all experiencing. Yes, borrowing that from a friend. But so really taking a step back and looking at the historical precedent and understanding that these shifts have happened in the past. So going back to the bubonic plague, even in the 1300s, led to the end of serfdom because of so many people sadly and unfortunately passed away, that it created a power shift and then led to the end of serfdom. More recently, the last pandemic that we went through prior to this one was right on the heels of and actually overlapped World War I. If you can just imagine that, a world war and a pandemic at the same time. That shifted the power balance to women in the workplace because there weren't enough men to do all the jobs that needed to be done. So that's when women came into the workforce, and that allowed them to lobby for more rights and also got some of us, unfortunately not all of us at that time, the right to vote 100 years ago. So when we look at it from that perspective, I think it would be tone deaf for us to think that we're just going to go back to normal, like we're just biding our time until we can get back to normal. So I think it's important to look at this as that opportunity. So you had asked about, how has the pandemic been a catalyst specifically for workplace change? And I would say that it's really moved the naysayers over the hump, if you will, past the curve. Because remote work has been around long before the pandemic. And if you go back to 2017, even the Gallup State of the American Workplace survey report, 51% of employees said that they would change jobs for a job that offered them more flexibility. That was 4 years ago. That was 3 years before the pandemic started, right?
Wow.
So if we look at it in the context of, Patrick Wyman's comment, is that it reveals what's already broken or is what is in the process of breaking. It's that lack of flexibility. It's that lack of autonomy and choice.
I think it's such a big statement, and study after study after study shows that people will take less money for a job to move to a place that's got a better culture, more flexibility, one that allows them, autonomy, which I think is it's one of the areas that really allows that intrinsic motivation.
Yes. Daniel Pink, right?
Daniel Pink,
and others.
Daniel Pink,
yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
So, question: how can organizations start thinking differently?
Well, I think if first we have to understand how people are thinking differently. And I'm sure that there's some level of thinking differently. It's just a question of how and what the order of magnitude of different thinking is, right? Mm-hmm. So, we're working with a client right now, and their head of engineering said, you'll be hard pressed to give us a reason to come back. We're doing great. Working remotely, 100% remotely. And then there's also companies that are highly engineer focused that are saying, we really need people to come back to the physical office because that's how we collaborate best and innovate best. So I think, you're dealing with people, organizations aren't these monolithic things. They are an aggregation of humans. And so humans are going to have different beliefs and opinions about how this has affected them and their teams. So you got to start with having those conversations.
Are you finding that a lot of organizations are not wanting to have those conversations?
I wouldn't say, no, I wouldn't say that they're not wanting to have these conversations. I think that they maybe haven't had these, some may not have had these conversations yet. And that goes back to a LinkedIn article that I shared with you, Lisa, on, kind of reimagining the workplace that I posted last June. And I think now is the time. I think then was the time to start having the conversations. However, I think that in June of last year, there was still so much uncertainty. And I think now that we have the vaccine, we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I think now more organizations are starting to think about what this looks like and how to come back beyond just coming back safely and all of that, which is of the utmost, criticality. But then beyond that, it's like, well, but then what does it really look like?
I think that's the ideal question, right? Is actually pausing and looking at it. What does it look like? And what does it look like for us? Can we be virtually based and physically enhanced, right? And figuring out that percentage that's going to work for each individual company as well as the people. But I'd like to back up just for a second. And if you're willing to share a little bit about, what does workflow interiors do? What is it that you really bring to the table and the impact that you make? Because I think it's easy to think of workflow interiors as, interior decoration. It's so much more than that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. So I kind of think of us as really good dot connectors. So we really look at, we really take a design thinking approach, and design thinking approach is something that can be applied in all aspects of different, of design. So it's really thinking about the user experience first, and then building that experience from there as opposed to like a top down approach. So we really look at the work experience. And as a matter of fact, I think really this idea of workplace strategy in my mind is really shifting to work experience strategy, because it really leads to the individual's experience of work, which is at the intersection of not just space, but technology and other people, and what are the goals of the business, and so there's a lot of dots to connect there, where I think there's a lot of opportunity within organizations who tend to think, generally speaking, not every organization, I don't want to make too big of a general broad statement, but that sometimes those areas of expertise within an organization tend to be siloed, and we really want to break those silos down and help people understand, if an HR team is talking about flexible work arrangements, that will have an impact on technology, right? So IT needs to be at the table, and real estate needs to be at the table, because if people are only coming in 30 or 50 or whatever % of the time, that's certainly going to have an impact on real estate as well. So we really have to get everybody to the table and have these conversations so that they're all interconnected. And so we're really good at connecting those things together.
I love what you're saying, and I use that a lot in coaching, which is they're not mutually exclusive, they're interconnected. And I love the fact that you're talking about breaking down those silos, because I think that just permeates every area of an organization, and the importance of being more collaborative. And I never thought about having to bring in real estate, right? Having to bring in the technology piece. That's massive. So those are the different components of strategy, workplace strategy, that you bring to the table.
Yes, in a nutshell.
I love
as
that.
much as we'll get into it for a 30-minute conversation. But yes, and I think the other thing is, to highlight in that, as you were talking about, that aha of bringing real estate into the conversation, is that oftentimes, like organizations with, C-suites, real estate is not in the C-suite typically. Real estate reports to the C-suite. So again, I think it's just another opportunity to, and I talked about this in that article that I briefly mentioned, is really getting a cross-functional team together and making sure that real estate facilities is at the table as part of that team for that conversation, because it is a critical element. It's the physical interface that brings us all together.
Definitely. We need to make sure that we're getting everyone to the table and speak up and have that voice, which I think is collaborative, right? It's
Yes.
connection.
Yes.
So I'd love, again, to dig a little bit deeper. When someone comes to work with you, what are the outcomes of really looking at the interior workspace and the flow of it all? What is the outcome for them, for the business and the individuals?
Yeah, so we really, we take a very strong stakeholder-based approach. So we make sure that we access and talk to all levels of the organization through various different types of engagements. So, starting from the leadership team to understand and set the course and the vision for whatever the initiative may be, and really understanding, because I don't think organizations can't outpace the mindset of the leadership team, right? So we have to kind of know where we're starting from. But then through a series of engagements all the way throughout the organization, we start to do that dot connecting that I was talking about earlier, and really understand what's important to the employees in doing their best work. And I think you can't talk about people doing their best work without talking about what's best for them as human beings, right? So that there's that other opportunity that we talk about, the pandemic being a catalyst for workplace change. We know things weren't working before. Our mental health as a country, our level of burnout, which certainly I don't think this pandemic is helping, but it's bringing it to the surface, I think, for many of us, as giving us the opportunity. I love that. I love how you talk about pausing, Lisa, because I think that is not a natural inclination for us as people and as organizations, groups of people that are moving towards a common goal. We just, let's go, let's get it done. So that idea of just really pausing and thinking about, in a knowledge work environment, in order to ensure the best work product, you also have to ensure that you're taking care of the human that's behind that work product. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there for companies to think a little bit more broadly. We're past the industrial age where we're just building widgets. I mean, for anybody that's phenomenally interesting and awful story, the Radium Girls, right? It's like we're past that age where it's just about output and at the expense of human wellness. And I think we have to look at that as well, because this is the most powerful thing that we're not putting things together on a factory line anymore. As knowledge workers, we're not. So how do we make sure that that holistically we're well taken care of and we're taking care of our employees?
I'm really hearing evolution, like that's the word that just keeps popping into my head. It is a natural progression of the evolution of focusing on our community, of our employees, right? Focus on your employees, make sure that they're taken care of and feel seen and heard, and they're going to take care of the clients, which the clients are then going to take care of you. Yeah. You touched on, the mental health and the burnout piece, which I hear so much about these days. And actually, May is Mental Health Month, and that's just going to be a topic I think that we need to bring up. Would you be willing to go a little bit deeper on that and the importance of creating this workflow, this workplace strategy, so that we can start minimizing that burnout and helping people with the mental health of everything that's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we can do as much as we can to provide people autonomy and choice. If you go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right, we're all trying to get to that level of self-actualization. So, that autonomy and freedom is a part of that path to self-actualization. as well as, thinking about how flexibility really helps us show up better at work and in other aspects of our lives. Not to mention just the time resource, right? Time is the one resource that is an equalizer for all of us. We all have 24 hours in one day. And to be spending, up to, who knows, wherever you live, but, it could be up to, 3 hours a day or more commuting. How could that flexibility support, having more discretionary time to be a part of your community, to contribute back to your family, to potentially even work, if needed, work longer hours on a particular day, whatever it is, but let that be your choice based on what the task at hand is. So I really think it's moving towards that idea of flexibility. People have wanted it since well before the pandemic. It's a human condition. It's a desire at a human level. So if we can figure out how to bake flexibility into a work experience that benefits individuals and teams, thus in benefiting the organizations, then let's just figure out how to do that. And let's figure out what that looks like at a team and individual level.
Excellent point. How can someone who wants to really start looking at that start that conversation?
Just by starting the conversation. So, I think it depends, if you're, if you're already part of a team within your organization that has been part of this like return to office, and also I just have a little soapbox statement to make. Can we just please not call it return to work? Can we call it return to office? Because
excellent. Yes.
Yeah, because we are working, and we're probably working more than we were before. We're working harder, we're trying harder, and everything is so scheduled and regimented. We've been working for the last year, and while trying to stay well, keep our families well, and some people are also becoming teachers throughout this experience. Yeah, exactly. So return to office would be better, or return to workplace, or anything but return to work. So with that said,
thank you for highlighting that, because that is such an important point that is easily overlooked. Yeah. Definitely.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. As far as starting to have the conversations, I think if you're part of, a lot of organizations pulled together these cross-functional teams, which I think is phenomenal. And I think it's an imperative moving forward for us to manage and measure our workplace effectiveness, is keeping those teams together at some level. So, we worked with a client last year as they were figuring out their return to office plan, and it was legal, HR, comms, environmental health and safety, real estate, the building owner. All of these people were part of that conversation. And I think if you're part of that team, man, do you have an opportunity to say, not just about getting back to the office safely, which again, that is very important, but beyond that, what are the opportunities for us to rethink how we work and rethink what the office is for? So one of the things that we've been doing as we're talking to clients about this, is suspend reality for a moment. Not that it's that hard to do, because most of us haven't been to the office in a year, but if you could just suspend reality and pretend we're a startup that never had an office before. We're in a garage, and we're deciding whether or not we need an office. What do we need the office for? Start the conversation from there, because that's going to yield different things, and it's going to help to push us out of our default pattern of, we've always had an office, so we need one. And work is where we go. The office, work is where we go, and it's really what we do. We have the technology. I've got my laptop, a monitor, camera. We have everything that we need. That doesn't mean that everything that we do is best suited for home or some other remote location. So let's pull all of that apart and think about the activities that we need to be doing, and where those activities are best supported because of the things that are available to us in different places. So sorry, I just went on a tangent on that.
No, and I appreciate you going on that tangent, because it gives so much insight.
Thank you. Yeah, but I think so. I think no matter where you are, if you are not part of that team that is talking about a safe return to the office and figuring that out, talk to your colleagues, reach across to, I'm not sure who's on this call, but if you're in real estate, talk to somebody in IT or HR and ask them how they're thinking about this. If you aren't a leader of a team, just talk to your teammates, talk to your manager. How are things going, and what's working well for us as a team? Like in a team meeting, you could just say, hey, as we kind of think forward as to what we want to do, what's working well and what are the challenges? What's suffering as a result of all of us being apart, because there's people that are onboarding, let's not forget. Right. What's that experience like, joining a company in the midst of all of this? So really thinking through different people's experience of this based on their career stage, I think, is a very important factor as well.
You have touched on so many amazing insights, important things to be talking about. One of the things I really enjoyed what you just said was really taking our lens, the lens through which we're seeing things, and taking it off and maybe putting on another lens and coming at this from different angles and being more curious and creative and listening to other people, asking people to come to the table and creating a safe space as well. Not all workspaces are collaborative, but to be able to invite people to that conversation and look at this from a different lens of what is working, what hasn't been working, that we can actually have the opportunity to start creating something new that is supportive of not only the people within it, the organization as a whole, and the community. It's an exponential impact.
Yes, and it's different for different teams, and it's different for different individuals. It depends on what your home environment has been for the last 12 months. Some people work more effectively in an environment where they're surrounded by others with like that buzzy cafe feel. Some people need the complete and utter silence, and but for different tasks, again, it really comes down to supporting the work and then supporting the worker, and not necessarily in that order. I don't mean sequentially, but both and
simultaneous. Yes. Absolutely.
Yes.
Amy, what are some resources that people could be looking to start researching and bringing into the organization to start exploring this?
Oh gosh, well, there's no shortage of documentation out there. If you just do a Google search on workplace right now, I mean, there's no shortage of information out there just to hear and learn about what other organizations are doing. Other resources are, get somebody involved, an external consultant involved in helping guide you through this, or at least start to have the conversation. I would start there. I mean, there's a lot of resources for folks like us that are in the industry, like professional organizations and things like that, but they also have articles and things like that you could get access to. But I would just start, and I would imagine many people are. I mean, the workplace conversations, when I started out in my career, it wasn't mainstream media fodder. Like, nobody was talking about it. And then in probably about the past decade or so, right, when we started to get, we started to see headlines like, proof that the open office plan is Satan's handiwork, I think was one headline.
That's an attention grabber.
Yeah. And I think it's great. It is. Oh yeah, definitely. That's a grabby headline of the year. But I think, I think it's a good thing. I think it's a little bit, you have to be skeptical. You have to go into it with a scientific mindset and understand the perspective of the individual who's actually writing the article. But there's so much good information out there that is you could look on any major publication and find really good information about workplace, just for starters, again, to understand. It's like, we're always, every day I start my day looking at different articles about workplace, and there's, what is Salesforce doing, what is Google doing, like what are all these companies doing? And it's not necessarily, that does not mean that's what you should do, but it just opens up minds to the possibilities, right, to understand how other people are thinking about things.
You were touching on something I was thinking about, which is looking at Google, looking at these other larger organizations. But I think it was Google or something that they just opened up all of their office space. And after years, they really determined that it was making people less effective and less efficient. So to approach something new with curiosity and play it out a little bit within your organization, within your business, and seeing how it fits in, and inviting people to the table to get their perspective as well. Because again, it's not silos, right? It's increasing that collaboration.
Yes. Yeah. And at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is support the work. I mean, that should be the focus. Is really how can we ensure that people are working as effectively as they possibly can, wherever that might be. And then making adjustments based on the information that we get from those conversations.
And in addition to that, how can we get that working as efficiently as possible? That also includes bringing joy, having the happiness, right? That all the studies show that when we're really good at home, we're really good at work, and work also impacts at home. So we need to look at how there's that crossover. So more efficient means that you're being more efficient and productive in creating more space at the end of the day. So you're not running out of the office or running from your dining room table to run to the kitchen, however you're doing it these days, to really be looking at it.
That's one of the things that we're hearing from people, from clients, is that that psychological separation of home and office, or whatever that is, home and wherever else work is happening, is really important, and something that some people are really missing these days. And I think also, you spoke to that joy. It's like, how do we bring joy and like that social aspect back into our work days? We have to be very intentional about it now, whereas just being physically co-located before was kind of the elixir that we needed for it to just happen. And now look at us, right? We are zoomed out, teamsed out, everything has to be scheduled. Like even this morning I had a call with a colleague and friend, and she was having problems logging into Teams today. And I just said, well, why don't we go old fashioned and pick up the phone and have a conversation over the phone? Like, we don't have to, so just really thinking about ways. So I tend to start all of my meetings now with a little bit of chit chat, and making that we save room for some of that socialization, so that the relationships and the bonds continue to be strong. And it's not just about all business, because we are all missing those, face-to-face interactions, even if it's a meeting, but also the spontaneous, like all of the spontaneity that we had in the workplace is for the most part gone. Everything is kind of scheduled, planned. Like, I'm not going to just pick up the phone and ask you a question. I'm going to probably ask you for 30 minutes on your calendar, and then we've got to schedule that out in a day or so. So, kind of trying to find our way back to that, and, virtually as a proxy, doing as best we can to maintain those kind of elements that we're missing from from physically being together.
You're making me think as well as it was not as efficient when someone could stop by your office and be like, hey, Amy, you got a minute? Right? So you've got to stop what you're doing in the moment. So that in itself has helped us be more productive. But in the long run, where is it getting in the way? And we do need that social component. We do need that check-in. And I'm so with you with that good old-fashioned phone call. I've been having more and more of those lately, because Zoom is just, I find it is easy to be disconnected. Whereas when you're on the phone, you're just listening with that different ear. And you had mentioned a few minutes ago about being intentional, that when we can be more intentional in our connection, in our conversations, and in our work, it plays out to a much more positive end. Absolutely. So Amy, is there a question that I didn't ask you that you would have asked yourself?
Oh boy. Oof. Related to workplace, right?
Anything. The bar.
Yeah. Well, I think thinking about who needs to be at the table for these conversations. We touched upon it a little bit throughout the conversation, but I can't emphasize enough the importance of really thinking about all stakeholders. And that may not just be employees. But the top-down approach certainly will not work. It didn't really work before, just from a change engagement standpoint alone. But then moving forward, I think it's so critical, as we talked at the beginning of this conversation about these power shifts and the opportunities for these power shifts, and it's large events like these pandemics. And so I think, we have to be cognizant that, if we don't embrace the idea of and moving along in our individual continuums as organizations of what moving towards flexibility looks like. It may not be, you don't have to go from in-person to 100% remote. I mean, that's not necessarily recommended, or it not right for your organization. But I think starting to have the conversation with and having a stakeholder-based conversation is absolutely critical.
Perfect tip to end on. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Can you share with people how they can reach out and contact you, get in touch with you, the best way that you would prefer them to do?
Sure. Yeah. LinkedIn is an easy way to find me. So I would say LinkedIn, you can just type in Amy Hill Workflow. That should pop up. And you can also email me, amyh@workflowinteriors.com. So either way, or you can send a carrier pigeon or a smoke signal, whatever you want to do.
The old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
Love it.
Kicking it old school. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And for everyone who's watching, please check out their website. It is absolutely beautiful. And I think it's inspiring, even if you have a home office right now, to look at the different ways that we can make things more just attractive, and you want to spend a little bit of time there instead of looking around and thinking, oh, it agitates me. So definitely check out their website. Amy, thank you so much. I am incredibly grateful that you spent the time today. I do want to mention that next week, I'm going to be interviewing Shannon McCombie, and the topic is going to be Stop Trying to Fit In, Wield the Power of Not Conforming, right? And utilizing that to your benefit. Now, Shannon worked for the CIA. She has done some leadership training with the Navy SEALs. Powerful, powerful woman. You do not want to miss this conversation. So that is next week, March 18th at noon East Coast time. And I hope to see you there. And to everyone, really, thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, Lisa. Bye, everybody.